Have you ever felt like love, instead of giving you wings, has chained you down? At a certain age, what we once called companionship can turn into a silent prison, built from worn-out routines, emotional dependencies, and sacrifices no one seems to notice. No one says it out loud, but many stay trapped in relationships that no longer add anything to their lives simply because they're afraid to face loneliness, without realizing that loneliness might actually be their greatest freedom. Today, I want to reveal an uncomfortable truth. After 60, looking for a partner might be more poison than cure. Not because love is bad, but because no one prepared you to understand it through the lens of maturity, without illusions, without unnecessary burdens. Stick with me, because we're going to walk through 9 reasons that could completely change the way you see your relationships. I promise you, the last one will shake you more than all the others, because it will show you where to find the love that truly matters. I'm Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. Stay with me until the end, because today might just be the day you finally reclaim your freedom. Let me ask you something, and I want you to be brutally honest with yourself. How many years have you spent chasing an idea of love that, deep down, has left you feeling more empty than fulfilled? How many times have you stayed in a relationship not because of true love, but out of fear of being alone, out of habit, or because of that poisonous whisper that says, it's better to have someone by your side than to face the silence of your own home? This is the first point I want to talk to you about today, the myth of eternal love that keeps you chained. We were raised with the image of a love that conquers all, of couples growing old together as if that were the only right path, the only true sign of emotional success. But what no one ever told us is that many people end up dragging those relationships like a cross, never stopping to ask if they still make sense, if they're still a source of life or just dead weight that wears down the soul. No one tells you that sometimes love, misunderstood, can be the very cage you lock yourself in every night before you go to sleep. Picture a bird in a cage, not a cage made of iron bars, but something subtler, more dangerous, one built from memories, past promises, and unresolved fears. That bird's wings are intact, it could fly at any moment, but it doesn't, because it believes there's nothing for it outside the cage. That's how many people live their relationships in old age. They're not there out of love, they're there out of inertia, out of fear, because they believe it's too late to open the door and take flight. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that the obstacle is the way. But what happens when the obstacle is you, clinging to an idea of love that stopped serving you long ago? What happens when what you fear most, loneliness, uncertainty, what others might think, is precisely what keeps you trapped in a lifeless, stagnant relationship? I know people who've made it to 70, even 80, shackled to relationships that drain them, relationships where there's no conversation left, where every day feels like a hollow rerun. But they stay, because breaking free from that routine feels scarier than the slow erosion of staying. And there lies the real poison, believing that the familiar, no matter how gray, is better than the risk of starting over. Let me tell you something that might sting, but you need to hear it. Love is not an obligation. It's not a trophy you have to hold on to at all costs. If love has turned into duty, into burden, into constant sacrifice, then it's stopped being love. And every day you stay chained to that idea only pushes you further away from the chance to live freely. The good news is that Stoicism reminds us no shackle is eternal, except the one you choose to keep. And in your later years, when you no longer have to prove anything to anyone, when the life you've lived has given you the clarity to see what truly matters, what's the point of holding onto a cage you could have left behind long ago? Today, I want you to ask yourself this question without fear, without flinching. Is the love you're holding onto freeing you or chaining you down? because that's the first step to taking your life back. And trust me, what comes next will show you why being alone, truly alone, might be the key you've been searching for all along. We've already seen how the myth of eternal love can turn into an invisible cage, one you hold shut yourself out of fear or habit. But the real issue doesn't stop there. We've arrived at the second key point of this video, and it's one many people are afraid to face. Loneliness is not your enemy, it's your ally. I know, the word loneliness alone carries centuries worth of stigma. Since childhood, we've been taught to fear it, as if living alone, walking alone, sleeping alone were signs of failure or emptiness. And when we reach old age, that fear multiplies. We're told over and over that no one wants to die alone, that growing old without a partner is a sentence to sadness. But here's the trap. That view turns loneliness into a punishment, when in reality, if you understand it properly, it can be your greatest strength. Epictetus said that no one is free unless they are the master of themselves. And tell me, how can you be the master of your life if you're emotionally dependent on someone else's constant presence? Loneliness, mishandled, is dangerous, yes. But loneliness, embraced and cultivated, is a powerful tool. It forces you to look at yourself without masks, without distractions, to ask yourself questions you've avoided your whole life. The problem is that many people reach 60, 70, 80 years old and have never learned how to be with themselves. They've filled their calendars with commitments, their days with noise, their relationships with obligations, just to avoid that uncomfortable silence loneliness brings. But let me make something clear. That silence is not the enemy. It's the doorway to the serenity you've been searching for. The root of this fear lies in a false belief that our worth depends on how many people surround us, on whether someone calls us, visits us, needs us. Society, family, even misunderstood religion have convinced us that being alone means being less. But Stoicism and true Christian faith teach us the opposite. Christ himself would retreat into the desert alone to meet God and himself. The great thinkers, the wise ones, always sought moments of solitude, not as an escape, but as an act of strength. But when we never learn to live in our own company, the consequences are brutal. Anxiety skyrockets. Sadness disguises itself as nostalgia and drags us down. We start relying more and more on external validation, from children who call less often, from friends who may no longer be around, from relationships we cling to just to avoid being alone. And that's when we fall into the worst trap of all, accepting any kind of company, no matter how mediocre, just to avoid facing ourselves. Daily life then becomes a parade of concessions. We let people speak to us poorly, demand things without giving anything back. We accept empty gatherings, obligatory phone calls, lukewarm affection. And every time we do that, we move further away from the real chance to meet ourselves, to listen, to figure out what we truly need to live in peace. The result is clear: broken mental health, self-esteem dependent on others, and a view of old age as punishment instead of seeing it as the freest, most powerful stage of life. Because true freedom doesn't come when you have company, it comes when you no longer depend on it. I want you to reflect honestly today: how afraid are you of being alone? And what would happen if, instead of fearing it, you chose to embrace it? Silence isn't empty. It's fertile space. Space where you can plant new ideas, reconnect with God, read, walk, learn something new. Space where you can finally live on your own terms. You don't need to surround yourself with crowds to feel alive. You need to learn how to listen to yourself. And trust me, when you stop running from loneliness, you'll discover it was never a punishment, but the greatest blessing within your reach. Because only from there can you build new, more authentic relationships without dependence, without begging for affection. Loneliness is not your enemy. It's the teacher you've been avoiding. But today, if you're brave enough, you can make it your ally. And when you do, everything else will start to fall into place. Because once you learn to be alone, you'll never fear losing anyone again. And that is real power. So far, we've talked about how misunderstood love can become a cage, and how loneliness, far from being a threat, can actually become your greatest ally. But it's not enough to dismantle myths or learn to be alone. The next step is crucial, because without it, you'll stay trapped in the same cycles, waiting for things to change on their own. We've arrived at the third point of this video, and this is where things really start to shift: the emotional cost of caring for someone who doesn't care for you. How many times, just to avoid seeming selfish, have you completely given yourself over to taking care of someone who wouldn't lift a finger for you? It could be a partner, an adult child, a family member, even a friend. You're always available, always willing, believing that love means sacrificing yourself unconditionally. But let me ask you, what happens when that giving only leaves you drained, resentful, and empty? How much more will you give until there's nothing left of you? Epictetus taught that we are responsible for our own decisions, not the decisions of others. Yet many people carry the mistaken belief that they must shoulder everyone else's problems, that loving means accepting every burden without limits. And when that mindset spills into everyday life, it slowly destroys both your mental and physical health. You wake up tired, out of energy, because you're living to prop up others who don't even stop to ask how you're doing. You fill yourself with anxiety, with frustration, because you give and rarely receive anything in return. Over time, that makes you sick. It wears down your body, but even more, it wears down your soul. This is where I want to offer you a concrete strategy. Simple in theory, but challenging in practice. Learn to set a sacred boundary. A boundary not out of anger, but out of respect for yourself. Love without limits isn't love. It's servitude. Someone who truly cares about you will respect your time, your space, your needs, and those who don't, they'll simply drift away. And that's where your freedom begins. Imagine your life as a pitcher of water. If you're always filling everyone else's cups but never stop to refill your own, you'll eventually run dry. What can you offer others when you're running on empty? Nothing, except more exhaustion, more resentment, more of that nagging feeling that it's always your duty to carry the load. But if you decide to fill yourself up first, with rest, with moments for yourself, with relationships that nourish you, then what you offer to others will be real and sustainable. This isn't selfishness, it's self-respect. And the vast majority of people watching this right now have gone years without giving themselves that permission. So today, I'm offering you a simple but powerful exercise. The next time you feel someone expects you to be available regardless of how you're feeling, stop and ask yourself, am I giving from love or from exhaustion? And if the answer is exhaustion, dare to say no, kindly but firmly. Because if you don't set the boundary, no one else will. If these reflections are resonating with you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel right now. Also, hit the like button if you feel it's time to start taking care of yourself the way you take care of others. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and write a simple but powerful phrase. My well-being is my priority. I'd love to hear from you and know we're walking this path toward a more conscious, freer life together. Stay with me, because what comes next is just as important. And don't forget, the final lesson in this video might radically change the way you understand love and your place within it. We're just getting started. So far, We've talked about the importance of setting boundaries, of not continuing to drain yourself for people who don't take care of you. But there's a more subtle enemy that undermines that autonomy, one that, if left unchecked, will keep pulling you into empty relationships or a constant state of emotional dependency. It's time to talk about the fourth point in this video, the invisible trap of emotional dependence. This trap is insidious because it doesn't happen all at once. It's not something you clearly recognize one day. It creeps in slowly, over years and years of small compromises, unresolved fears, the belief that your worth depends on someone else needing you. It starts with seemingly harmless thoughts. What will I do if I end up alone? At my age, who else would want to share life with me? Better to put up with this. Who knows if I'll find anything better? And just like that, without realizing it, you start giving away pieces of yourself in exchange for a false sense of security. Little by little, you become a prisoner of your own need to be wanted. What makes emotional dependence so dangerous is that it always disguises itself as love. You think you're giving out of love, enduring out of affection, adapting out of understanding. But if you're honest with yourself, you know there's something else beneath it. Fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of not being enough. Fear that if you let go of that relationship, there won't be anyone else on the other side. And that fear is like silent dampness in an old house. You don't see it right away, but by the time you notice, it's already rotted the foundation. The consequences are devastating. When you're emotionally dependent, you lose control over your own happiness. Your mood depends on how others treat you, whether they call you, whether someone pays attention to you. You live with anxiety, waiting for external validation, believing you're only valuable if someone else reflects that value back to you. Autonomy disappears. Your decisions, your plans, even your thoughts revolve around keeping someone's affection, often at the expense of your dignity and well-being. And it's not just an emotional problem. Over time, this dependence weakens your inner peace. It makes you a slave to others' moods, whims, and absences. You stop pursuing personal growth, your connection to God, your philosophical calm, because all your energy is spent keeping afloat a relationship that in many cases no longer nourishes you. It's like walking with invisible shackles. Every step feels heavier, every day more exhausting, yet you keep moving forward without asking why. Seneca warned that the wise person is one who isn't attached even to material goods, much less to affections that depend on the will of others. And yet, how many people reach 60, 70, 80 years old with their soul bound to relationships out of fear, not love? How many have sacrificed their peace just to avoid facing the emptiness that comes when you stop depending? This is where I want to invite you to pause and ask yourself the question almost no one dares to face. What would happen if you let go of that dependence today? What would happen if you stopped looking outside for what can only be found within? At first, the emptiness might scare you, but on the other side of that fear is something infinitely more valuable. Freedom. And that freedom is priceless. It's the space where you can finally hear yourself again, walk without carrying others' weight, and live on your own terms. Because no one, listen carefully, no one is going to fill that void for you. That task is yours alone. And the sooner you face it, the closer you'll be to the peace you've been searching for. Emotional dependence is the cruelest trap because it convinces you that you can't be happy without someone else. But the truth is the opposite. Only when you free yourself do you actually start living. And that decision, no one can make it for you. Only you. Right here. Right now. We've now reached the fifth point in this journey, and if you've been paying close attention up to this point, you know we're not talking about surface-level problems. We're dismantling inner structures that, if you don't break them yourself, will condemn you to spend your final years bitter, and resigned. Today, I want us to put something on the table that many are afraid to admit, but sooner or later it ends up suffocating you: the hidden cost of concessions. You probably don't notice it at first. One concession here, one sacrifice there. You bite your tongue to avoid conflict. You give in because it's not worth the argument. You accept things because, at this stage, better not complicate matters. But every time you swallow what you really think, every time you shrink yourself to avoid making waves, something inside you dims. It's like dropping small coins of your dignity into a bottomless well. And one day, without even realizing how, you see there's nothing left. The problem with these concessions is that they're cumulative. They're not grand, heroic sacrifices you make once in a lifetime. They're micro-betrayals of yourself, daily, silent. The better stay quiet, the better put up with it, the I don't want to end up alone. And meanwhile, frustration builds, dependency tightens its grip, and worst of all, you lose respect, not just from others, but from yourself. Because deep down, you know you're betraying who you are. Letting this continue has consequences you can't afford to overlook. You'll live with a constant sense of dissatisfaction, with the bitter certainty that you gave too much and got little in return. You'll feel trapped without really understanding how you ended up in that prison. And the worst part? The people around you will start treating you the way you treat yourself, with disregard, with demands, with indifference. Because no one respects someone who doesn't know how to set boundaries. But don't get me wrong, breaking this pattern isn't easy. There's no magic formula. Undoing years of misguided concessions takes courage, and above all, it requires changing how you see your own worth. You can no longer measure your value by how much you endure or how often you bend to keep others comfortable. The perspective you need to adopt is this: your well-being is non-negotiable, your inner peace is not up for sale, and if protecting it means making people uncomfortable, setting limits, or even losing relationships, so be it. Marcus Aurelius said that tranquility comes when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. But as long as you keep swallowing your words, your thoughts, your desires, just to avoid conflict, the tranquility will remain out of reach. The question isn't whether it's hard to say enough. The question is, how much more are you willing to pay for not doing it? Today, I want you to hold on to this truth. Every unnecessary concession is a debt you'll eventually pay dearly for. And the only way to settle that debt is to start saying no, not out of resentment, but out of self-respect. It won't be comfortable. Some people will walk away, some will be upset. But anyone who can't respect your no will never respect your yes. So stop, look back, and recognize how much you've given up unnecessarily. And look forward with a new resolve. Never give away more than your dignity can afford. Because this is the only life you've got. And you weren't put here to live as anyone's shadow. If you've made it this far, it's because you know that continuing to give in, continuing to swallow your words, only leads to more frustration and exhaustion. We're no longer talking about simple day-to-day decisions. We're talking about your life, the years you have left, and how you want those years to feel, whether they'll be weighed down by endless concessions or whether there'll be a chapter of true freedom. And for that change to be real, we need to face an uncomfortable truth that few dare to admit. It's time to talk about the sixth point of this video: the weight of the past. Old loves that won't let you move forward. I want you to close your eyes for a moment and picture yourself in a room full of boxes. Each box is labeled with the name of an old love, a past relationship, a broken promise. Inside are the memories, the unspoken resentments, the arguments you replay in your mind over and over. Even though that person is no longer physically present, Even though the relationship ended years ago, you're still carrying those boxes day after day. And each day, they get heavier. The cruelest part of this is that many people live like this without even realizing it. They remain emotionally tied to a love that no longer exists, that dissolved long ago, but still dictates every decision they make. They wake up each morning, comparing the present to an idealized past, wondering what could have been if that person had stayed, if things had turned out differently. But life doesn't wait for us to sort out what's behind us. Life moves on. And while you're clinging to those dusty boxes, the present slips right through your fingers. There's no sugarcoating it. The reality is harsh. When you don't let go of those old loves, you become a prisoner of your own memory. New opportunities to love differently, to understand yourself better, to enjoy your own solitude, get blocked. Your energy is hijacked by ghosts, by people who may not even think about you anymore, but who you keep alive in your mind as if they still had control over your happiness. The result is brutal. You live frustrated, stuck repeating patterns that no longer serve you. You carry guilt that isn't yours, or resentment that eats away at you from the inside. You isolate yourself, waiting for that past love to somehow return, while your present fills up with lukewarm, mediocre, or even toxic relationships, simply because you're too afraid to let go of the past and make room for something new. I want you to ask yourself this honestly. How much longer are you going to let a love that no longer exists dictate how you live? How much longer are you going to drag those boxes around, letting them take up space you could fill with something new, something real, even if it's just coming from yourself? Time won't give you back what you lost, but it can give you something far more valuable, the chance to free yourself right here, right now. Because as long as you keep looking back, you're denying yourself the possibility of moving forward. No one else is going to clear out that room for you. That's a job only you can do. And yes, it might hurt. Yes, you might feel empty at first. But believe me, it's far lighter to live without carrying what no longer has life. Maturity isn't about accumulating more memories. It's about learning to release the ones that no longer serve you. And if you don't do it now, when? How many more years are you going to spend replaying what's already gone, letting it drag you deeper into the same pit of dissatisfaction? Today could be the day you finally decide to leave those boxes behind. I won't promise it'll be easy, but I can promise it will be necessary, and that first step, it's yours alone. If you've made it this far and had the courage to look back, to recognize the boxes from the past you're still carrying, then you already know you can't keep living trapped in what was. But letting go isn't enough if you don't take one more step. Because the empty space left after you let go has to be filled with something solid, something real, something that doesn't depend on anyone else. This is where everything we've talked about comes together, and we reach the 7th point of this video. True fulfillment doesn't come from someone else. It comes from you. It's hard to accept. After decades of believing that happiness comes from the love you receive, the company you keep, the recognition others give you, turning inward and realizing no one is coming to save you feels like a hard blow. But it's also freeing. Because you finally understand you don't have to wait for anyone to feel whole. Everything you've always looked for outside, affection, respect, dignity, you can build from within if you have the courage to take full responsibility for your life. Real transformation only begins when you stop making excuses, when you no longer blame your partner for the decisions you're too afraid to make, when you stop blaming your children for your emptiness or your circumstances for your unhappiness. All of that is just noise. The only thing that truly matters is what you're going to do with what's left. Age isn't a barrier. Loneliness isn't a sentence. Lack of recognition isn't the end. The only limit is your willingness to look yourself in the mirror and stop lying. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, and those thoughts cannot be chained to what others do or don't do. Today, right now, you can choose to fill your life with things that rely solely on you. Learn something new. Invest time in yourself. Connect with your faith, not from lack, but from the fullness of knowing you are already enough. But if you keep waiting for a relationship, a partner, an outside presence to give you what you haven't yet given yourself, get ready for more of the same. Frustration, dependency, disappointment. You're not at an age where you can afford to keep repeating those patterns. You don't have time to keep putting off your own well-being. Life, as it is, without embellishments or empty promises, is asking you to finally choose yourself. And let me be clear, no one is going to do it for you. No one's coming to give you permission. Fulfillment isn't something you find in someone else. It's a raw, firm, personal decision. Either you take the reins or you keep living at the mercy of circumstance. The choice, as always, is yours alone, right here, right now. So what will you choose? We've already made it clear that fulfillment doesn't come from outside. You can't expect anyone else to fill the voids you're not willing to face yourself. But understanding that isn't enough. Knowing it changes nothing if you don't take action. This is where most people get stuck, in reflection without ever moving into practice. And that's why we've arrived at the 8th point of this video. Your time is yours. Don't waste it on mediocre relationships. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Every day, you choose to stay in a relationship that drains you, that doesn't enrich you, that exists only out of fear or habit, is a day lost. And time, at this stage in life, is the most valuable resource you have. It doesn't come back. There's no way to rewind it. Are you really going to keep giving away your years, your energy, your peace of mind to people who add nothing to your life? Because that's exactly what you do every time you stay out of inertia. There's no magic formula here. The concrete action is simple and brutal. Make a cut. Stop postponing. Today, as soon as this video ends, if you know there's someone in your life who's just taking up space without giving anything meaningful, who drains you, who's only there because you're afraid of the void, dare to create distance. Don't expect it to be easy. It won't be. It'll hurt. You'll feel the vertigo of letting go of what's familiar. But staying where you are, watching the years slip by while your inner peace fades, drop by drop, that will hurt far more. The mindset you need to hold on to that change is not the one seeking comfort. It's the one willing to face silence, to withstand what others might say, to embrace uncertainty, and still hold firm. You need to understand that living freely requires discomfort. It requires standing in that first emptiness without running to fill it with anything just to avoid the pain. Because if you fall back into the same trap, you'll have learned nothing. So today, I don't want you to tell me you understood. I want you to act. Close cycles. Set boundaries. Cut off mediocre relationships without fearing loneliness. Because your time is yours, and if you don't protect it, no one else will. It's not your partner's job, your children's, your friends'. It's yours alone. And the cost of waiting is steep. Losing the only life you have in the endless repetition of the same. So I'll ask you now directly, are you going to let another day slip by? Or are you finally going to start living on your own terms? Because time won't wait, and neither will life. It's all in your hands, right here, right now. You've seen by now that cutting off mediocre relationships, setting boundaries, and reclaiming your time isn't a comfortable path. It demands discomfort, firmness, and above all, letting go of the old excuses you've clung to for years to avoid making a move. And this is where many stumble right before crossing the line. Because recognizing the problem isn't enough. you have to rip out by the roots the pretexts that keep you tied down. That's why we've reached the 9th and final point of this video. True fulfillment doesn't come from someone else. It comes from you. I know exactly what's running through your mind. I'm too old to change now. I don't want to hurt anyone. Maybe, with time, things will get better. Every one of those lines is poison, dressed up as caution. They're the invisible shackles you've learned to fasten with near-perfect skill. But let me tell you plainly, each of those excuses is a lie that only prolongs your discomfort. And the more you repeat them, the further you push yourself from the life you could be living. Your age isn't a limit, it's an excuse. There's no clock marking the end of your ability to choose. As long as you have one day ahead of you, you can change. The real issue is that it's easier to believe it's too late, that the effort isn't worth it, because that way you avoid facing the fear of the unknown. But that fear won't go away. The difference lies in who's in control, the fear or you. Another deadly excuse is thinking that setting boundaries is selfish, that cutting ties with people who drain you is cruel. But what kind of life are you building if every step you take is to keep others comfortable while you quietly bleed out inside? That's not generosity, that's self-denial. And let me remind you once more, no one's coming to save you. No one's going to hand you the fulfillment you've been too afraid to build yourself. Then there's the trap of passive hope. Maybe if I just hold on a little longer, things will get better. That hope isn't virtue. It's disguised cowardice, because you already know. If you don't act, nothing will change. Don't expect someone who's been taking advantage of your giving nature for years to suddenly wake up and become a different person. The transformation you're waiting for out there has to start inside, or it'll never come. So, today, I want you to see these excuses for what they are: a false refuge, a wall you've built to avoid taking responsibility, and it's time to tear it down. If you keep justifying your paralysis, don't be surprised when one day you wake up and realize life passed you by, waiting for others to change, for the perfect moment to arrive, for the fear to disappear. But here's the simple truth. Fulfillment depends on no one else. It won't come from a partner, a child, a friend. You won't find it if you keep looking outward. You're the one who has to fill that space. You're the one who has to decide whether to keep living under excuses or finally dare to take control. There's no other way out. And today, right now, is the only real moment you have to do it. Everything else is just an illusion, pulling you further from the life that, even at this stage, you can still live fully. If you decide, once and for all, to stop waiting for someone else to do it for you. If you've made it to this point, it's no coincidence. Very few people dare to listen all the way to the end when the truths being laid out aren't comfortable or easy to digest. What you've just heard isn't a feel-good message meant to lift you up for a moment, only for you to slip back into the same old routine. What you've heard is a raw invitation, and now the choice is yours. No one can walk this path for you. No one else can break the chains of emotional dependency, the fear of loneliness, or the weight of the past in your place. It's your responsibility alone to face your life head-on and ask yourself if you're going to keep giving away your days, your years, to mediocre relationships, meaningless concessions, and excuses that have kept you stuck for far too long. I want to acknowledge something. It's not easy. It's not easy for anyone. But here, at the Stoic Garden, we're not here to talk about what's easy. We're here to talk about what's true. And the truth is, if you've made it this far, you've already shown something rare. The willingness to listen without shutting your eyes, to face discomfort and stay, even when it hurts. That willingness is the first step toward real freedom, the kind that doesn't depend on anyone else. And I want to know who's taken that step. So if you're one of them, make it clear in the comments by writing the phrase, I choose my freedom, and let me know which country you're watching from. I want to read your words and know we're not alone on this path. My name is Gabriel, and this space exists for one reason only, for those who've decided to stop being victims of circumstance and start taking control of their lives. No sugarcoating, no false promises. Here, we don't sell easy comfort. We build strength, clarity, and above all, autonomy. So if you feel this message has struck a chord with you, subscribe right now and become part of this community that refuses to settle for merely surviving, but instead seeks to live fully, with dignity and purpose. Share this video with someone you know needs to hear these words, someone who might not yet have the courage to break their own chains, but who might just begin to wake up. And don't go just yet. This is only the beginning. I invite you to continue this conversation by watching either of the two videos now appearing on your screen. Both are designed to walk with you through this process, to make sure you don't lose the momentum you've started building today. We'll be right here in the Stoic Garden because life still has so much to offer if you're the one who decides how to live it.